I have a story to tell that most of you wouldn't believe. I was just coming back from the hospital where I went to see my ex-wife. About 2 years ago, my then ex-wife told me that she wanted an open marriage after I caught her cheating. I was shocked and didn't see that coming. I thought that part of her was gone before we got married. Prior to the beginning of our relationship, about 8 years ago, she told me about her history of alcoholism and promiscuity. After I caught her in a lie, she convinced me that everything changed when she became a born-again Christian. I believe that God forgave her because she was a devoted Christian. If God could forgive her, then who am I to hold it against her? I went ahead and married her knowing her history. Basically, my wife was a Jezebel. She slept with more than 20 men in college and drank a lot. She was shamed by her fellow students and her girlfriends and had a reputation when she was in college. People judged her so much that she ran into the church as a penance for the life she had lived, which is a big reason why she became sexually repressed during the course of our marriage. Before diving deeper into my story, let me give you some background about myself and my wife, so you guys can fully understand my story. Why am I sharing my story? Because I thought mine is so remarkable that I thought somebody could learn from it. I was 28 when I first met my wife. She was 24. My job requires me to move around so often. It was stressful and didn't allow me to build relationship with people, but the compensation is well worth it. In late February 2006, my job moved me to a town in rural Ohio. I grew up in the Midwest, so it wasn't too unfamiliar to me. I was an introvert, so I'm not really into the sunshine and bright lights. I grew up in a Pentecostal family, and my family are very religious, which rubbed off on me as well. 3 weeks after I moved into town, I joined a dating site because I was lonely, bored, and depressed. I felt like I was wasting my time in the middle of nowhere while my friends are getting married and living their best lives. I have dated a couple of girls before, but never been in a relationship. My friends would say that I was too picky, and that was why I am single. I am quick to point out all the flaws in girls as to come up with reasons why they are not worth my time. But in reality, I am scared of being judged and rejected. Part of the insecurity comes from not having any experience with women and being overweight, which caused me to remain indoors most of the time. And I developed a habit of watching uncensored content online. I knew watching those content further degenerated my desire to go out to the real world and search for my soulmate. Furthermore, because of consuming those sort of content, I became self-conscious of my size down there. This further eroded my self-confidence. I was lucky to graduate college and get a job that pays me well enough. However, one of the downsides is that I have to travel a lot. 3 weeks after I settled down in the town in Ohio, like I said before, I joined a dating site. But most of the attractive women live very far away, and I wasn't matching with any of them, even with the unattractive ones. I felt angry, depressed, and unwanted, and deleted the app. I was immersed in the online world, and my life revolves around work, playing video games, and watching uncensored online content. One Sunday, I decided to attend a Pentecostal church a few blocks from my apartment. They seemed friendly enough, and it was nice to interact with other people besides my coworkers. There were not more than 200 parishioners, and most of the parishioners were old people and married couples, except for one young woman that stood out of the crowd. She was sitting 3 columns away from me. She was the most beautiful woman I've ever seen, in real life at least. She stood out in the crowd. Her smile was intoxicating. I thought that she was way above my league, and I had no chance. When it came to the handshaking time, my heart melted when I saw her coming all the way from her seat 2 columns away to shake my hand. At that moment, a small part of me thought it was because she liked me, but I soon realized that everyone else was climbing over each other to shake my hands. Only because I was new, I was being recognized for that, to encourage me to come more often. It worked, mostly because I wanted another chance to shake her hands again. It took me about 5 Sundays to carry on a conversation with her besides the normal "God bless you." It was during the handshaking time that I found out that the elderly couple she was always sitting next to were her grandparents. She asked me why I was only coming on Sundays and not showing up for Bible studies on weekdays. I told her that I have work, but I would try to find time. In reality, I do have time after work, but I was trying to make it seem like I'm always a busy person. Fast forward a few months later, we became friends, and I asked her out to a local baseball game. She originally told me that she wasn't looking for a relationship, but accepted to go out with me. I remember waiting for her, thinking that she stood me up. I didn't want to text her because I felt like a total loser. But luckily, she showed up at the last minute, saying that she was busy, which was why she was late for our date. I didn't question her, I was just happy that she showed up. Long story short, we started dating. At least that was what I told myself. But I never had the courage to ask her about our relationship status. She refused to be intimate with me because she told me that there were things in her past that she's dealing with. Additionally, she told me that she didn't want to have premarital sex. I actually thought she was a virgin, so I was patient with her. About 4 months later, we became boyfriend and girlfriend. At least that's what I thought. And still we weren't intimate. We only kissed occasionally. One day she came by my house to spend the night, and she fell asleep on the couch with her laptop still on. Her Facebook account was open, so I snooped and read some of her messages. I was shocked to find out that she was in communication with multiple boys, mostly from her school in another state. I spent hours reading her messages because I was curious to find out who she really was. From what I could gather, she was running from something, and she was stringing along more than 6 guys that I was sure that she was romantically involved with. I was so caught up with the snooping that I didn't realize that she had already awoken. She asked me why I was going through her Facebook messages. I responded that she lied about who she really was, and she seemed to be in a relationship with multiple men. She denied being in a relationship with multiple men. She said it was in her past. I asked her why she was acting like a virgin if she had had sex with all these men, and she told me that I have no right to ask her or judge her, and that we weren't even in a relationship. I responded that if we weren't in a relationship, then why is she at my house, acting like she was a virgin, when she has been physically intimate with all these men? She immediately started packing her things, preparing to leave. I wanted to stop her so bad because I was already in love with her, but I felt hurt and rejected. I thought she never wanted me, and she was running away from something, and she was hanging out with me out of pity. So I didn't stop her. I was really depressed when she left. I thought we were dating, but never added a label to it. So in a sense, she was right. We weren't in a relationship. We stopped talking. After she left, I thought our relationship was over. The following Sunday, I didn't go to church. That week was hell for me because I couldn't stop thinking about her. After 2 Sundays of missing church and Bible study, one Tuesday evening, I received a surprise call from her. She asked me why I didn't show up to church. She said it almost like the argument we had 2 weeks ago didn't even happen. I thought clearly she was playing an act. Knowing what I know now, I should have seen that as a red flag. But no, I played along by saying that I thought it would be awkward if I show up to church while she was there. Then she said something that totally melted my heart. She said that she misses me and apologized for not letting me in on why she was staying with her grandparents and haven't gone back to college to finish her school. She told me that she was wild in college, going out often and drinking too much. She mentioned that she was passing out from drinking almost every day and was going to clubs often. Unfortunately, she came down with a kidney failure and spent weeks at the hospital. After she got out of the hospital, her parents thought it would be a good idea for her to go and stay with her grandparents and help them out in their farm, get some fresh air in the countryside. She never left because she said she found God and was doing much better. She told me that those guys she was communicating with were just her past relationship and everything was in the past. I didn't want to argue with her. I wanted her back in my life so much because I have missed her. I didn't hold back about how much I cared for her, and she told me that she wanted to come to my place the following day to make us dinner. That night was the very first night we had sex. We became inseparable from then on out. I proposed to her 3 weeks after we got back together, and we married 2 months later. The only issue we had was that she needed to visit the doctor regularly due to an ongoing kidney problem. It wasn't much of a problem back then. However, after we had our first daughter, she needed dialysis treatment at least once a week. Her health started deteriorating and she lost a lot of weight. She was a stay-at-home mom back then, but I do what I can to help around the house because she was continuously out of energy. We got pregnant the second time and she miscarried, so she spiraled into depression. I did all I could to make sure that she's comfortable. I cook, clean, give her foot rub, and we were hoping for a miracle because her health was slowly deteriorating. We visited the doctor and he informed us that she was close to the end state of renal disease. Then she was added to the transplant waiting list. We waited for about 6 more months before her kidney transplant, but it seemed like we have to wait longer while her condition progressively deteriorates. It came to a point where we had to make a decision. We both have the same blood type, so I could donate my kidney or face the possibility of losing the love of my life and the mother of my daughter. We continued to attend church, getting support from family and friend and church parishioners. But it came down to the wire and I had to make a decision. I decided to give up my kidney for my wife. At that time, I didn't know if I could live without her because I loved her so much. We went through the operation and everything went smoothly. A few weeks later, I was back on my feet like nothing happened. I felt like a part of me was missing, but I was happy that that part of me gave her life. The love that we share for one another intensified and we had a second daughter 4 years into our marriage. Months later, she was still a stay-at-home mom, taking care of my 2 daughters. She had more energy. I was traveling more. Then I felt like she was slowly pulling back from becoming active in church. She stopped going to Bible studies and some Sunday service as well. She was starting to nag me and complain about us not taking enough vacation and how the town we were living in all of a sudden was boring and she doesn't feel like living a country life and how she would love to live in a big city. Luckily, there was a position opened in San Diego at my job. I applied for it and got it. I immediately accepted because I know my wife would be happy to move to San Diego. Sure enough, she was elated when I broke the news to her. About a month or so later, we moved to San Diego. We rented out the house we own in Ohio. We planned on buying a house in California, but we couldn't afford anything, so we rented. When we got to California, my wife was back to her glamorous self. She was back to the person that I fell in love with. The home prices and the cost of living was a shock to my wallet. Naturally, I wanted to work more so my family can continue to live a comfortable life. And that means spending less and less time at home. This really affected our relationship. I tried to do some things on weekends with my wife and daughter, but it wasn't enough. She always wanted more. About 6 months of living in California, she stopped asking me to spend more time with the family, etc. She started doing her own thing. She was going out to the beach a lot. She started doing yoga and working out sometimes twice a day. She was looking really good. I, on the other hand, was getting chubbier. People would see both of us and wonder how I scored a hottie. I would joke to them that I gave her my kidneys. Life was good in my household, so I thought. We had fully recovered from our surgery and our kidneys were functioning well. My wife was happier than any time in our relationship. However, I felt like we were growing distant. She wasn't involving me in any of her activities, and I was feeling like we were roommates. I was also concerned that my wife has a lot of free time and was making a lot of female friends that I wasn't comfortable with. I noticed that most of them are not the type that believes in God and were into fitness modeling. I wanted my wife to be more involved in the local church. I thought maybe if we had another child, she wouldn't have time to be hanging around these questionable characters. One night, I spoke to her about it. I told her that since we moved into San Diego, I felt like we were getting distant, and she wasn't involving me in any of her activities. She responded that it was because I was working a lot, and she didn't feel like I had the time. Then she agreed to include me in some of her activities. Then I suggested that we should maybe try to have another baby. She responded that another baby would cost extra for us and would result in me working more, which made sense. However, I felt like it wouldn't make any difference because the extra activities she was doing because she had all this free time was costing me more. I didn't want to share my concerns about her friends, but I told her that we should start becoming involved in church again. The final decision on whether we should try to have another baby was not made that night. However, over time, I was able to convince her that we should try again. In the following months, we tried to get pregnant, and she told me that she went off birth control so she can conceive. We also got involved with a local Pentecostal church as well. The improvement in our marriage was noticeable because we were more intimate and familiarizing ourselves with our new friends, mostly from the new church. After 3 months of trying to get pregnant with no success, we thought something was wrong, so we went to see the doctor. He ran some tests, and everything was good. The doctor's advice was that we should do it more frequently, so we were doing it every day, almost like a chore. One day we went to a picnic together with our daughters at a well-known public picnic spot. My older daughter was playing with my wife's handbag, and suddenly the bag fell, and the content in my wife's handbag scattered all over the lawn. I was closer to my oldest daughter, and my wife was a few steps ahead of us with my youngest daughter. So I bent down to pick the contents that fell on the lawn. As I was picking the stuff that fell off my wife's handbag, something stood out. Her birth control pill. I found the birth control pill that I thought my wife stopped using more than 3 months ago. I recognized it by the container, but I didn't think much of it, as I thought that maybe it was a leftover container from when she was taking the pill. However, my wife's reaction had convinced me that something was up. She immediately came towards me and tried to rush everything back into her bag, like she was trying to hide something, and tried to snatch the container out of my hands, which caused me to tighten my grip and take a closer look at the label. I looked at the label on the container, and the date shows that the pills were recently refilled, and the pharmacy was different from the ones that we normally use. I would later find out that she changed the pharmacy so I wouldn't notice that she's no longer using my insurance. When I realized what was going on, I was confused. I asked my wife why she was taking the birth control pill, knowing that we were trying to get pregnant. She tried to lie by saying that she was holding it for her friend, but the gig is up. I told her to stop lying and that she has been caught. I was confused because I didn't understand why she was lying to me for more than 3 months now. We were in public place with other families having picnic on the lawn, and she was feeling embarrassed that I was loud and people could hear our conversation. She wanted us to find a quiet corner and continue the picnic, but I was done. I told her to get back in the car, that we're heading home to have a talk. We argued all the way home. When we got home, she kept saying that she didn't want to have any more kids and that I was pressuring her, so she didn't want to disappoint me. I told her that I felt deceived and betrayed, and she kept saying that she didn't want to have another miscarriage and she didn't want to go through another postpartum depression. I told her that those are just excuses. We argued throughout the night, and I told her that we are not sleeping in the same room. She slept on the couch that night. I took some sleeping pills because my mind was all over the place, and I have to go to work the following morning. My phone alarm woke me up and I got ready to go to work. My wife was in the living room with my daughter. I walked past her without saying a word and went to the kitchen to make my breakfast. I was having breakfast when my wife came into the kitchen and said that we should talk. I said, sure, I'm all ears. That was when she suggested that we have an open marriage.